Well, congratulations on your investment in the pathways to growth for your company. And now that you're going to go deep, I want to tell you that we're going to walk you through these 9 management disciplines in depth and show you how to really bring them to life in your business so you get real measurable growth, real top line growth that's consistent as a system in your business. But everything is couched still within creating breakthroughs with your people. A system is only as strong as its leader. As I've already said, the chokehold on the progress in any company is always either the psychology or the skills of the leader. And I want to just point out before we begin, if you want to create a breakthrough is that moment in time where what was impossible suddenly becomes possible and people do it. They actually follow through. They don't just think about it. Breakthroughs I found in my life, really as I work with business people around the world, I've seen that there are 3 areas that breakthroughs happen. You can create huge change by getting a new strategy. In other words, you find a better system, a better way, you put that strategy in place. Sometimes you can compress decades into days. You can do in weeks or months or a year what you might have thought would take multiple years. The right strategy can really cut through all the waste, and that's really what technology is all about. That's part of what this book is about. But sometimes people have the strategy. They know what to do. They know the breakthrough. They know what can make this all happen, but they don't do anything with it. And they don't do it with it. They don't follow through. It's like the typical example. Most Americans today are overweight, the majority. 3 out of every 4 men. And a third of our population, more than a third, 38%, are obese today. That means they're 30 pounds overweight or more. Why? Is it because the strategies of how to be fit, strong, or healthy are so complex? Or they're so expensive, only the 1% can afford them? Or they're hidden and you just have to work your guts out for years to find them? The strategies are everywhere, aren't they? I mean, there's somebody around the corner that'll come work you out, or there's a club, God forbid you were to walk to it, you could drive to within 5 or 10 miles for most people. I mean, you could download all the answers onto your iPad or your iPhone. God forbid you'd actually do any walking, get those answers again. The answers, the strategies are everywhere. The problem is we don't use strategies if we don't deal with our limiting stories. Now, I mentioned earlier stories. If you listened to some of the first part of this book or read a first part of this book, a story is just a set of beliefs that we tell ourselves over and over again until it connects into a story. You know, somebody once said, if you tell a lie big enough, loud enough, and long enough, sooner or later people believe you. That was Hitler. Well, we're Hitler in our own minds very often, and sometimes the salespeople you're managing are Hitler to themselves. They might start to hear stories about the product of your company, or a competitor has some advantage, or something about the economy. And there may be some truth to the story, but it's not the whole story. And they make it the whole story. They grab a hold of it as the reason why they aren't doing what they should be doing, or why the results aren't as high as they need them to be. There's always a look. We're all afraid of failing. It's in the nature of human beings. So we look for a reason that's not our fault, something we can point to outside of ourselves. And sales leaders and sales managers do this as well, as you well know. It's part of human nature. So becoming aware of your own limited story. You can't help someone else change their story about the company if you're buying in it to yourself. And sometimes when things are overwhelming, when the economy takes a hit, when all of a sudden competition comes out with a product, sometimes we generalize everything. We give them the advantage in everywhere, and we forget the advantages we have personally. So as the leader, besides coming up with the strategies that work, you and I have to figure out what's the story that we can own in ourselves and that we can deliver to our teams. And you can almost always hear it or see it or perceive it in your team when it's happening. But what do you do to break that story? What do you do to shift them? That's what every leader has to look at. And by the way, if you shift that story, you're not going to do it unless you shift the third element. And the third element's the simplest one, but it's the most powerful one moment to moment, and that is your state. As a leader, before you go and do any of this stuff, your state, your level of certainty, your level of passion, your level of excitement, your level of energy, your level of ownership of what you're going to talk to somebody about is the most powerful thing that's going to affect them. Listen, we all know in human communication, words are 7%. That's all the researchers said, what the words you use. Now, certain words can ignite people, don't get me wrong, but words are the smallest part. What affects us more is voice qualities. Tone, tonality, tempo, volume, all of these things shift us even more. Studies show about 38%. But your body is 55%. Your gestures, your facial expressions. And I don't mean manipulating these in some fake way. I'm talking about when you get into a peak state, you get into a rant, you get into something you're excited about. I don't have some script right here to talk with you. I'm in state with you. I'm thinking about how to serve you right now, and I know there's certain things I've talked about that are important, and I'm going to come deliver them. If I was saying here, now, point number 1 is this, and point number 2 is this, and here's the third thing, you're going to turn this thing off in a moment. You can read that damn stuff in a book. What we're looking from each other is an exchange. Listen, what makes somebody, like Mark Benioff be able to do what he does? To be able to take this company from nothing to $4 billion in, 13 years. This man has had a story. He believed in the story of what's possible with a cloud. He immersed himself. He did the preparation. So he had not only a strategy, but he prepared his mind and body for what it is he really believed could make a difference. And then he got on fire with that passion and went around the country telling that story again and again and again. And he continues to do it, growing his company geometrically. Different style, but certainly Steve Jobs did the same thing. Who's better at telling a story, or was, I should say, than Steve Jobs? I mean, pretty extraordinary. He could sell iced-in Eskimos. He'd come out and say, we have what we believe is the greatest breakthrough in the history of the world. It's not exact language, but, it's a miracle. And people would buy it because he owned it. He believed it inside of himself, and he brought a state to the table. I mean, who do you want to be around? Somebody comes in and says, all right, guys, let's go through the update. Tell me what your numbers are, That person, I'm exaggerating only slightly, unfortunately, from some things I've seen in large corporations, that person, I don't care what system you put in place. I don't care what 9 disciplines, I don't care what strategies you go in. Their story and state is the chokehold on the growth of that business. So our job, if you and I are going to really maximize what we're here to do, is to make sure we have all 3 of these. The right strategies, the best we can find, a story that we own that's real and authentic, but that we own, that's inside of us, and that we can translate to other people, but also the state to make that happen. So how do you do that? Well, everyone's different, but the first thing that'll get you in state is being fully prepared. If you can, so prepared it's in your bones, then you're not going to have to think about what do I say, how do I say it, how am I coming across? You're going to own it. Preparation is always number 1. But then number 2, you got to get in state. And so different people do it in different ways. Some people read, some people listen to music. I love being something physical. That's my nature. But I've found that if you want to change somebody's state, emotion comes from motion. Maybe it's time to go on a run, especially if you're finding yourself in a place where you're overwhelmed by challenges in the environment, or you're overwhelmed by just how much you got to get done. In that frustrated or overwhelmed or stressed state, you're not going to be your best. Everybody communicates well when they're in a great state. When you're in a lousy state, no one communicates well. That's why people get into trouble and arguments and family challenges and intimate family challenges with their loved ones. If you're going to change that game, you got to recognize if I'm not ready, not only with my information, if I'm not feeling where I own this, it's time to do something physical to change my state. So going for a run, lifting weights, going for a strong walk, put some great music on, whatever it is that ignites you into a different place. And I'm not saying be like me. I'm not having any suggestion that's right. I'm obnoxiously intense and passionate, but you got to be your best. And you know whether you're there or not. And the way you're going to get yourself there is really score yourself. Where am I 0 to 10? Where am I? 10 is absolutely ready to rock and roll and make this thing happen. 1 is near dead. If you're walking into that meeting, and even if you're prepared mentally, but you're not in state, at least at an 8 or 9 or above, you're certainly not going to get close to maximization. Better to get yourself at level 20 on a 0 to 10 scale that's obnoxious and calm it down where you can reach people, than try to pump yourself up in the middle of the meeting. You're not the leader if you're doing that. And do this with your people. Listen for their stories. What are they saying about things? And when you find the story doesn't make sense, ask them more questions. Don't make them wrong. Get in deeper. My purpose here in this couple of minutes is not to try and teach you how to do all 3 of these, but you already know this. I'm just saying bring it to your attention. It's a good little tool for you. Do I have the strategies? Do I own the story? Am I in state? Now, am I giving the strategies to my team, but do they have the overall story that's going to truly empower them, that's real and authentic? And do I have them in state? If you looked at somebody like Steve Jobs, he certainly knew where the audience was, and he knew how to adapt. He knew how to put people in state, and he used imagery and music and a script and everything else to tell that story, but from a state where he was owning it and was truly deeply excited. People could feel it. It's infectious. If you look at anyone who's great in that area, I have a dear friend, Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 financial traders in the history of the world. And if you go to the Jones group, to Paul Tudor's group, you're going to find yourself in a place where every morning they ignite the airwaves first thing in the morning with cranking music. These are traders that supposedly are cerebral on their computers, to ignite them into a peak state, because Paul's seen the power of that. He's done all my programs. And he'll often put on videos that inspire. He raised $57 million for Robinhood, which is the #1 group that supports charities in New York City. He's given away $1.2 billion. But I watched him just recently. We worked on advance. He prepared, he laid out his talk, but then he made sure in front of all these top Some of them cynical, some of them inspired, financial people, some of the best in the world, billionaires and multi-billionaires. And he's going to go out into this group of 5,000 people, and how's he going to ignite them to give, to get beyond themselves? He didn't just give his talk, he owned it, he felt it, and he put on Braveheart, and he brought this music. What would you give, years from now to know you made this difference? He was playful, he owned it, he used the music to put him in state. There's so many tools. All I want you to get from this talk is don't settle for less than you can be, do, or give. Don't settle from your people. Start with you, strategy, story, state. Go after their strategy, story, state. And if there's one that's most valuable to create change quickly, change the state. Because if you don't, have you ever noticed how when you're in an angry state with somebody, you're mad at them, suddenly you can remember everything on earth they've ever done that's pissed you off? Or can you remember a time where you fell head over heels in love, or at least in lust, and suddenly what's wrong with your life? Your story changes when your state changes. And the strategy is never going to get applied unless the state and the story are there. I hope this is helpful. And I hope that the process that we're sharing you here will make a difference in your business. Let's go to the next step. Thank you for your time.